Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar for Continental Aspire Soccer. We're obviously going to be discussing a variety of topics, and there's obviously going to be four that I think is really going to be helpful to everyone to gain a good understanding of the online football chain. My name is Nick Donnelly, founder and CEO of Continental Aspire Soccer. And we're obviously just going to be talking about kind of obviously recruitment, why player recruitment is a science, and being scouted and those looking for tryouts, and how all that good stuff actually works. For those of you that are obviously new, thank you for following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and obviously the other platforms that obviously were involved with Spotify. One of the things you can also do, like I say, you can keep up to date with all of our latest content right on those platforms for anything Continental Aspire Soccer, and a lot of the guests obviously that we do have on. We obviously are spacing them out just due to COVID as well. If anybody's wondering why you're not seeing more in terms of, so that's kind of just to explain that. So what I'd like to do is everybody has subscribed. They will obviously receive a copy of the webinar here, of the first one, and what we'll actually do, we'll obviously discuss all of that. But without further ado, like I say, we're just obviously going to go through in this webinar today, and we're obviously going to talk about for those. I know there's people from all over the world. They're looking to understand. How they can increase their opportunities as a player, as a parent, but also the parent might want to gain more education, kind of how the professional football industry really works for them and their children who are actually on this journey right now, and aspiring players, whether you're foundational phase, which is 5 to 11 years of age, or you're actually between the ages of 12 to 16, which is youth development phase. And then, of course, last but not importantly, most important to get right, is literally going to be the PDP, professional development phase, and that's for players who are on scholarships through to players who are turning professional, typically on their 17th birthday. This is all this will actually apply to everyone in here. So let's kind of just get started here. So why player recruitment is a science. So the variables involved for players to be successful in order to actually be scouted. And there's obviously a lot of different things that kind of come into it. I think inside the mind of a scout, they literally will follow a philosophy of their chosen club, and what that philosophy is. But I think one of the things that I think a lot of scouts really do look at in young players, and one of the things that they're looking to identify is that player, obviously, does he obviously have the ability? But the first thing I think the clubs really look at is, and all the clubs we look at in the continent, even clubs in England that do get in touch with us, they're always looking at like the attitude of the young player. And also we do have other stuff which we will disclose in the online football training course. If you want to bypass this webinar and go right there and register, and we'll kind of talk about the things that the tips that the clubs actually give us in terms of what they're actually looking for. And so it's a list directly from them, and directly from our relationship with them. So in terms of to be obviously successful of actually being scouted, these are things, kind of do's and don'ts with parents, but also one of the things that scouts are obviously looking at, they're looking to see how a player reacts, how he interacts. You know what I mean? How does he evaluate the people that he plays with? Does he really express himself? Does he really enjoy playing football? You know what I mean? Is he going well and coming into the environment? And like I say, way before that obviously happens, also what his kind of they'll obviously speak to a lot of different people. But I also think a player that really shows a good attitude, I think when you're in possession, out of possession, those are so important, you know what I mean, for people to obviously recognize your ability, but also going through what has he kind of been through, as a young player. You know, has he you know, what level has he been at? That's also another side of it that a lot of scouts look at. Also, you know, I mean, what type of does he have any goals? You know, and I think scouts, they look at the smallest things, and you'd be really and I know from obviously all going all the way back, and I think this will definitely help. I know for me, I had to go through quite a lot of phases on my journey from a development perspective, and there's a lot of different things that I had to, you know, I had to kind of progress through in order to get to a much higher level as an academy player, you know, to the point where I was obviously going to be capped from a country at under 21 level. So obviously the amount of players I had to bypass, even, you know, your school team, that could be one of the things. That was also another thing that I had to go through. So that might be something that you obviously need to be looking at doing well for your school team. Definitely helps. And I think a lot of scouts, they will obviously call around, clubs will call around, because their networks are very, very deep. I always call them, you know, the football version of this, of pretty much intelligence. But it's MI5 CIA, that these are on a football level. This is the way scouts operate. This is the way professional clubs operate. So, and that's why they get very little wrong, because they can see what other people can't see. Also, leaving grassroots as well, the habits, they want to see, can they translate? Can that habit translate? Are they one of the best players in the team? Are they a good team player? So a lot of these things are, and there's a lot of other variables that scouts look at, which I'll address kind of in the next point, pretty much in the webinar. But like I say, being the best you can be, making sure that you're doing all of the above. For example, making sure you're not coming, like, if a scout sees you and you're eating a McDonald's or something, you're eating something very unhealthy, that's just a no-no. And that's something that will definitely be scrutinized. Definitely, unless there's, you know, sometimes that could be related to a family, so maybe you come from a single parent home, or, you know, depending on where you're coming from. So those are definitely areas that obviously scouts obviously going to be looking at. I know when I would scout, and I used to work in recruitment for clubs, I would always look at those little things, you know, and I would ask a lot of different people. And as long as I could see how good that kid was from a character perspective, and obviously I want to obviously know the other things, which kind of drives me into like my second point in the webinar here, is the importance of club level, your family situation, and for example, in terms of you know, that's and the school situation. We call this the football triangle, and each of them kind of support each other. So just to give you an example, if a young kid is, so if he's at a very good club where he's kind of progressing, and then of course his family situation, that definitely will affect a kid that typically comes from a family that's very, very much together. So not divorced, not saying divorced parents, kids can't be successful, not saying that at all, but I do think it does definitely help a kid when mom and dad are there, and, you know, they're supporting them, because I can't stress this enough. Coming on this road, just from being scouted, that's the very beginning. It's all the things you've got to do. So for example, the sacrifice, you know what I mean? You know what I mean, will definitely be seen. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand. They don't realize how much kids actually do sacrifice to actually make it to the next level. So that's definitely going to be an important component in your development. So it's something definitely for parents to be aware of. So keep making sure the kid is getting enough sleep, things like that, right? Then of course you also have making sure he's doing well in school. Making sure he's doing well in school. That means, you know, doing as best he can, because a club will say, well, a kid that's doing well in school is a kid that's really going to apply himself as a player. And I think the way that players are now, especially coming through in terms of coming to like an academy, one of the things that we kind of look at, and we obviously will screen players and kind of put them through the kind of the CAS player pathway, which we'll go more into in like the online football training, but pretty much the talent identification for Continental Aspire Soccer. So that's definitely going to be very, very important. So this is why it's a science, because there's so many aspects to recruitment. It's not just they come and a scout will see you once and then you'll be seen. Also, it could mean you're in a non-EU country. It could mean you could be in North America, you could be in Canada, somewhere in Asia, somewhere in the world. But like I say, our goal is, yes, to make sure we get to all of those types of kids, to pretty much provide them with a platform to obviously do well. But I always say your school situation, making sure that you're on top of your work, making sure that, you know what I mean, in terms of your family life, that a kid is very, very happy. And one of the things that we also do address, we do obviously talk about in the online training we'll be doing, if people are registering there for that. One of the things that they will actually, we'll kind of go into detail what we do to actually understand, and like I say, we obviously do a lot of assessments which tell us if a kid is going to be suited to a career in professional football. That's a career in professional football is not for everyone. I believe that you have to have a certain personality, a certain mentality to do that, because it's by no means easy, and that's why a minority of people make it to the very top. But I believe what we do, we separate ourselves from everyone else because clubs kind of like what we do, and they know that we prepare young players very, very well before they actually see them. So it literally makes so the transition is easier, it's smoother, it's quicker. And so, like I say, that's why we focus on the triangle, the football triangle, which is your family life, the club that you're with, and then, for example, your school situation and what you do in school and activities. And also clubs do like it when kids are involved in other activities, because it shows they like to interact and they're socially developing, things like that. So those are definitely areas that are definitely focused on. And I mean, I can tell you, we've got an interview coming up very, very shortly with a particular coach, and he worked with Virgil van Dijk and Frankie de Jong, and he actually explained to me their kind of triangle, and kind of why their triangle helped them to make it as professionals. But we'll obviously discuss that more in the, for example, more in the online football training course. If you register, you'll find out more about that, where I'll obviously speak about that as well. And then also, in terms of one of the other things that obviously looking at the factors affecting the player profile. So if a kid is somewhere in the world where the level of football is not very good, and we understand that is the case, it could be they live somewhere. I mean, we get contacted by loads of players all over the world, players that are playing in North America, the UK, Australia, Japan, China, India, and they're not all going to be in places where the dominant sport might be rugby, or it might be ice hockey, or it might be another sport outside of football. And so they'll look at kind of what their opportunities and their possibilities are going to be. So we definitely understand that. But the key is to get into a team where you can actually play, but also where you can actually progress. But for some people in certain parts of the world, they may have to come to things like ourselves, where we can actually put them through the CS player pathway, which is the international talent identification. But this is good for you to get some good information for yourself to understand as a parent, as a scout, as a coach in another country, as a youth organization that wants more help and more guidance, based upon where you're from. So the player profile, working on that is definitely going to help you to get scouted. So looking at the best possible position, and obviously if you need advice on that, we're always going to be happy to answer any questions. Like I say, you can obviously drop us an email. You can get in touch with us. All the information is on our website. You just go to www.continentalaspiresoccer.com, where we'll be absolutely happy to answer any questions that you may have. And then, like I say, so elevate your player profile by coming to different events, where there's obviously you're going to go through, and you're going to go through a talent identificational process, and that's kind of what we'll actually cover. So the clubs that we can deal with are more we're kind of in, for example, in German Bundesliga, the Dutch Eredivisie, French Ligue 1, Austrian Bundesliga, and the Belgian Pro League, and then Italian Serie A. So those are the places we like to focus. In England, we still have a lot of connections in English football, but like I say, our focus is definitely we're a continental European player platform. So that's obviously where we can actually help you with your profile, develop that a lot more. So this will be a good opportunity for you to, as you come and you listen to our webinars and you pick up kind of a greater understanding on what you need to obviously do to help yourself and also for your parent and those that support you. So that's definitely going to be very, very important. In being successful, and why player recruitment is a science is it's about your profile. That's what scouts are all. That's what they'll always look at and kind of see where you are. And if not, they can always recommend you to that area. If we're familiar with that area, we can definitely help you in that space. Not a problem. You just drop us in our socials, and we'll help you the best as we can. So players who've succeeded and failed in pretty much when they went on trial, or they've went to a talent identificational process. Maybe sometimes you can club for like a couple of days, maybe it's a week, maybe and then invite you in for 6 weeks because they want to see you, they want to see how you interact with their academy, their coaches, and see where your level is as well. So there's certain players that whenever they go into a club, one of the things that actually happens is that they can go in, and there's some players I've heard of that just freeze. They freeze because they're going from a grassroots perspective, or if they're 16, 17, where they've been in an organised academy, it's a decent level. But also the fact that players are going to be released, that's definitely going to happen. And sometimes that's actually a good thing. There's a lot of players have been released and went on to become superstars. So I do see that happen quite a bit in players that obviously have actually progressed. So wouldn't let that deter you. It's just one. No, it doesn't mean, I think as long as you're working hard and you're doing all the required things. But when a player succeeds is when he goes into a club and he really fits what the club is all about. Don't get me wrong, there is a little bit of luck sometimes, you know what I mean? So if you're in a team that's really good and say for example there's injuries, but then you could then bypass a lot of and I've seen that happen a million times. So there's always that possibility, but there's always that variable that you're dealing with. But also it's also one of the things that we have at CAS is we document every single club we deal with. We speak to them every year. We know what they're doing. We know what they're looking for. So we can pinpoint when we see a kid where we believe he's going to be best suited, and obviously how we screen players and know the players are going to make it, the players that aren't. So typically a player that we feel isn't going to, he wouldn't bypass the CAS player pathway and go straight to a club on our recommendation if we don't believe he's going to be a good fit, because I think that it's up to the player to come and show himself. But players need loads of help. They need loads of help. The parents need loads of help, especially if they've never been in this journey before. So that's going to be very important for you moving forward. Next, I would definitely say when scouts start to do reports and report back, and when they view, okay, this player is very successful. So kind of what would obviously tip the AS, a player will come they'll come through the online part. That's the best way to come in and learn, and then from there they'll then come out, they'll register for one of our talentification camps. So it's typically it's usually 1 week. So it's a 1 week talent identification camp. And then from there, then we obviously go into like a 4 week. But if you're from abroad, you'll only typically come to like a 7 day. Then from like a 7 day, we'll have a very good understanding of where your level is at this point. And so kind of in saying that, one of the things, so we'll obviously have scouts there, and they'll obviously be screening. They'll be screening players, and then they'll usually sit down with each player and have a discussion with them for 5 to 10 minutes and kind of just go through things with them and give them feedback and obvious. So that's definitely going to be Well, I believe obviously has to have also in terms of being tested against better players. I think is one of the most common ones. And so literally, when reports will be carried out, the report will be carried out. Typically, the sports, but they just update them, and every club has their own portal. So they'll put in, and most kids will never know they've been scouted up until they're approached to go in. Or it's getting near that point, and then they're just finalizing those reports. You'll come in that process, but when it comes to a player then being signed permanently, then there's an actual report that's submitted kind of beforehand. They also have to do this because of health and kind of child welfare, which FIFA obviously have a big responsibility to, and so does UEFA. So whether you're from a non-EU country, the rules are all the same under the banner of FIFA. So, like I say, things are always touched upon. So these are definitely things that, when you're going to be going through that journey, that you obviously will obviously, you'll obviously be assessed on that level, and reports will be carried out. And we actually cover that in the online football training course. So we'll give parents the opportunity to see what we're talking about. Like I say, we'll actually address a player who actually is being assessed, and in terms of and how he's being scouted, and the things that have been written down. So it really helps people to kind of see, and it's broken down. And it's broken down, so we look at it from our philosophy at CAS, which is personality, game insight, technique, and speed. So that could be speed. That could obviously be the personality of the player. Does he work hard? Does he care for his teammates? So that's one of the things that we really look at. But also, I think if you watch a lot of our podcasts and follow us, you will actually have a greater understanding of what we actually do, and the people we talk to, and the subjects that we cover. So we are experts within the professional football industry. So we know the questions to ask. Like I say, obviously I've done a lot of stuff for example, like Manchester United, all the way to clubs like Ajax, to clubs across the Eredivisie, clubs in Germany, and in the Belgian Pro League, high up there, amongst others, even Barcelona, clubs like that. So I'm definitely aware of what a young kid is going to go through, and I know it can be daunting, but at the same time, this is a journey, and it's important to enjoy the journey, to love the journey, and I think from there, you'll definitely learn a lot more about yourself on that journey. And like I say, when a club is making a final decision, and that's kind of we obviously give you a lot of feedback on what you need to be doing correctly at the time. And then everything else will take care of itself. But like I say, so for like a player profile, and when a report is done, that will obviously be shown to a player as he's kind of gone through the journey at the end. And clubs they'll usually release them year on year, and because they usually will meet with the player if he's signed to that club at that point. And we do the same thing at CS. Before a kid's going to go on the journey, we give them a report and we break it down for them. And a lot of our coaching staff have played over 450, between 300 to 450 league games at a professional level. They played at World Cups, they played at European Championships, things like that. So they're extremely experienced. So we understand what a kid is going to face, but also what he's going to learn the most. So any other questions that people may have, you can send us an email, or you can get in touch with us, and also interact with us via social media, so LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we'll try and answer any of your questions that we have. But like I say, the best thing to do also is just to continue to progress, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the second webinar. So pretty much, and we'll just be looking through what the mindset of what is the mindset of a professional scout looking for in a young player. So I'll look forward to seeing you in that one.